just warms my heart to see this kind of a crowd here. And before we do anything, we need to thank Martha and Jenna, Mary and Jenna, and Martha for providing this venue under extremely short notice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here.
Oh, this is beautiful, so thank you so much. We need to thank two groups that pulled this together. Women's Watch. Jenny, where are you? You at least need to wave your hand. Thank you. She was the driving force behind this. And Appalachian Indivisible, Marie, where are you? Thank you. Also want to let you guys know Pickens Progress is here. There is Angela and Jordan with No Pickens over here. So let her know who you are and share your appreciation for them giving us some coverage. We have musician Chris Farmer right behind us. Chris is working for Tips, guys, and there's a basket back there. Your basket? Okay, so let's drop something in his hat today. And if you don't have a name tag, get a name tag, get yourselves a drink, stand up, whatever you do. I guess I'll do the quick intro. I've been in and around Georgia since 1970 and have moved in and out several times. The last time I moved out of Georgia was 1998, and this was a Democratic state. I came back in 2010 to a whole different landscape. And then when we moved up to Pickens, it was even redder. So, to have two candidates to support that have our values and our goals in mind is an unbelievable honor. And so we need to thank both Lee and Josh for undergoing what I know is a grueling process. Let me introduce Josh McCall quickly. The man is a scholar. He knows the classics. He knows Latin, and most important, he teaches children. And if there's anybody who's got the best interest of our community in mind, it's him. Lee will get an intro from Marie. He's also an educator though, so I think we need to focus on that next generation, and I don't know two better candidates to do that for us. So, Josh, where are you?
Thank you. And thank you guys for showing up. This is the nicest stable I've ever been in. And, where I'm from in Martin, I've seen my fair share of stables. And this is a really nice one. A back porch. They even have a bathroom. It's pretty nice. So thank you for having us up here. My beautiful family's here, at least some of them. We saw my daughter Kate off today to Colorado. She's going with a choir tour, but Abby wanted to dress up and match my wife Jennifer today. So they're very good campaign buddies. So this week we have been working. We had a Flowery Branch protest. You're living in really awful times when you have to protest putting kids in cages. And I've kept thinking through the suffering that's going on in our country all this week. Father's Day this year for me was very different, because I don't know if you all heard about the one father. There have been so many families that have not made it into the news. But one of the families that did make it into the news was a man from Honduras who made the journey all the way from Honduras to the border, who turned himself and his family in seeking asylum. And they took away his child. He was so distraught that they had to physically restrain him. And when they put him in his cell, they found him later dead. he had taken his own life because his child had been kidnapped. This is a hard time to be alive in. It's a hard time to be running in because I've heard many people talk to me over the past couple of weeks. I've had suggestions from people. Josh, your messages are becoming too strident. Your language is becoming too strong. And I want to reply to those concerns today. When you take someone's child from them, this is not family separation. This is kidnapping.
Yeah.
And children as young as 3 months old who are being shipped to Michigan away from their parents. Parents who are being told, we're taking your child to get a shower, when actually they're being abducted. This is beyond kidnapping. This is torture. This is a systematic approach that goes all the way from Donald Trump all the way through his horrible cabinet and his staff, Stephen Miller. This is torture, and we have got to stand up against it and call it what it is: kidnapping and torture. Yes, we have camps. We have camps set up to separate these children from their families. These are internment camps, concentration camps. I kept remembering this last Father's Day. Jennifer will humor me on special days like my birthday or Father's Day, and she'll let me drive the long way back to Martin, the country roads, and I get to see where I grew up and where I worked, where I rode horses, and we went back to my old home place. And my father grew up on this place. It was actually so long in the McCall family, it was called the Old Place. And on the Old Place, there are so many memories. There was this very large field where we used to plant corn. One year we planted barley. And it was just a really beautiful area. We found old arrowheads there all the time. And I have a lot of very deep, powerful memories from there. And for Father's Day, one of the only things I wanted to do, I have a father-in-law. I have my own father, and we went to see them. And so my wife said, what do you want to do for your Father's Day? I said, I just want to drive up to where I grew up and just stand out there and look around. And everybody in here can probably remember home. It's one of the most fundamental longings that we all have. It's a longing for home. And when I stood there at this gate, the highway has passed through part of, that's actually where my house was. But there's this old gate that used to be there when I was growing up too. And there was this field that our trailer was behind. And I used to play every summer, every day, barefoot, no shirt, outside, my brother and I. And it was country life. We had life, we had liberty. We could pursue happiness. And the thing about living in liberty is that you really don't know that you're free. I never knew I was free. I never knew that I wasn't being oppressed because I grew up in such a privileged time. I remember one time when I was in front of our old trailer. Finally, my parents worked their way up and we moved into an actual house. But when I was very young, up until 5 years old, we grew up in a trailer. And I was out barefoot, running around in a field. And I was running, and I saw a snake. This is one of my most vivid memories, one of my very early memories. And I was running so fast that I couldn't stop, so I just jumped over the snake. And then I started running back home and yelling for my mom's name and my dad. And I just wanted protection. I wanted to be back home. And I can still remember my mother holding me in her lap when I was running from that snake. I was so terrified. I think the reason that I'm a Democrat and the reason that you here are Democrats today is because when we remember our childhood, when we remember our safety and our freedom, the feeling that you can run home when there's danger, we know that our childhood, that our freedom, that our liberty is only truly free if everybody around us has that same sense of freedom. Those babies and those children sitting in cages today are terrified. Every minute that goes by is a crime against humanity. Several people have already been shipped out, never possibly to see their children again. There's no system in place to reunite them with the most fundamental safety net in this world, with their parents. I pledge today, my #1 job when I get to Congress in 2018 is to fight not only for justice, for mercy, to get those children back with their parents, but also to follow that up with justice. Because we heard a lot about law and order in 2016, but we haven't seen much of it since Donald Trump took office. But I have a new idea. Well, it's not so new. It was new in 1776. I believe that justice needs to start right up there at the top.
Yeah.
The criminals who ordered the kidnapping and torture of these children need to be fully investigated with a transparent process. We need to have witnesses in Congress with protection to talk about who it was and what it was like to have their children stolen from them. We need to address justice and mercy in our country. It's been a long time coming. And finally, we need to enshrine the truth. You know, this past week was brutal for Donald Trump. But it was poetic justice that the truth is finally winning. He has tried to rule the narrative for so long now. But one thing he couldn't overcome were these little children from Central America coming to find life and liberty in the land of the free. They are going to overcome. The Women's March inspired me. I saw that women can stand up for themselves. The fight against the ACA repeal, when the disabled came out of their homes and were taken away and arrested in front of McCall's office, I saw that the disabled can stand up for themselves. But Democrats, we have got to stand up for those who can't defend themselves. Those children in cages, those vulnerable mothers fleeing violence and abuse in Honduras and El Salvador. It is our time to speak up and let the truth reign over lies. And finally, it's my fundamental belief that the greatness of America is not diminished by being shared. In fact, the greatness of America is as abundant as our need, and it is plentiful as our willingness to work together. Let's build a better future off of compassion and cooperation, not rage and terror. We've seen what that does. Let's build a better future together as Democrats in Georgia. Thank you. God bless. I'm here to take any questions you might have. Yes, Lori.
My husband wanted me to ask you what are you intending to do for the veterans?
The veterans?
My husband and I both are retired veterans.
Oh, okay.
And so we're interested in, what are you going to fight for us when you get to Congress, and what are you going to do? Are you going to replace some of the things that have been taken away in this administration?
Sure. Well, one thing that we definitely need to do for both veterans and for people who are in the military, the Republicans use soldiers quite a bit. They stand behind them, they make press conferences with them, and a lot of the money that we're spending on the military is not going to the troops. There are troops that make so little they qualify for food stamps. That's got to change, for one thing. We need to make sure that the money, the treasure that we're spending on the military, most of it should be going to the people who are putting their lives on the line. And part of that needs to be invested in a strong VA that actually hires the most talented people they can find. We need to stop cutting their budget. But there are some people who wait too long in line. And one of the things that I want to change for every American is healthcare. Make sure that healthcare is a right, not just a privilege for the wealthy, those in the front of the line. And so I think that the veterans who have too long of a line to wait in at the VA should be able to go to any hospital to get treated. So that's one of the things that I would do. Yes?
I need you to pay the bill.
Yes.
We go for Veterans Choice, they don't pay the bill.
Right.
And we're suffering for that. I have to spend so much time on the phone getting the bill paid.
Right.
And so I shouldn't have to do that. You know what I mean?
The burden should be on the government, not the people who've already borne the burden.
Yeah, let's not wait a year before you pay the daggone bill.
Right. I completely agree.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Yes?
I came within 6 months of going to Auschwitz. I was 13 and a half when my country, Czechoslovakia, was finally freed from Adolf Hitler's horror. My country was free after 1945. And the way we lost our freedom in 1948 was through a process which is identical to what is happening here. We had a democratic regime, and gradually the Communist Party took away the freedoms of all the other parties in bits and pieces. And in the end, overnight, they had guns and we didn't, and overnight they took over. And my poor country was under communist dominion for 43 years until 1989. And we are heading in the same direction unless we have people like you and other people do something about it.
One of the things I've been noticing, I've been reading back through some history, the people who lived through Auschwitz and the Holocaust, they didn't get there all at once. They started, by the way, with deportations. That's not where they ended up with. They didn't start with a plan in mind to have Auschwitz or the Holocaust. They began with mass deportations. They began calling human beings illegal, designating areas where certain human beings could be and certain human beings couldn't. Slowly but surely. But I have seen some very good signs this week. 2 longtime conservatives, actual conservatives, imagine that. Steve Schmidt came out this week and actually renounced his membership in the Republican Party. And he said it was incumbent on every true conservative to vote Democratic in the upcoming elections. Not only him, but George Will. I never thought I would be standing up in a room and saying George Will has advised all Americans to vote Democrat in the next election. But that's actually the case. He has come out this week and said the only check that we have on Donald Trump, which is a threat to our republic, is to vote Democrat. George Will. We are living in interesting times. But it's time. It's time to stand up as all good Americans. I've had Republicans come up to me. There's one man who goes to my church. I won't mention his name. He's as Republican as they come. He's an older gentleman, very reserved, and you can probably stereotype him if you see him. He's probably a Republican. But he came up to me when I was coming out of church one day. He said, "Josh, thank you so much for running." He said, "I voted for Trump. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was getting into. I cannot believe what we've become." He said, in separating those poor families, he said, "I'm going to be voting for you in the upcoming election." And we've got to be talking to our fellow Americans so that they have a path into voting for a Democrat. We must address other Americans in solidarity so that they can feel right about voting for a Democrat this election. Yes, Lynn.
I would love to see Collins and you have a debate. How can we help make that happen?
Well, I have seen that Collins certainly doesn't respond to civic duty because he has been silent. He was silent for 3 days after Charlottesville. He's been completely complicit in the kidnapping policy. So what we'll have to do is call for them publicly in letters to the editor. There need to be other people who can see that he's running away from the spotlight and running away from debates. So make it as public as you can. He may not respond to civic duty, but he might respond to shame. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Rebecca. I know you have an affinity with education, and I've been dismayed that Betsy DeVos is privatizing public education, systematically dismantling the Department of Education. What do you think you can do as a congressman to bring her in or get rid of her?
Thank you. Well, the great thing about 2018 is that Democrats are going to be in charge of the House at the very least. And we can have real hearings, actual hearings. And calling her in front of the House of Representatives to ask her questions and to make her answer them is one of the jobs in the House of Representatives. That's one of the things that we can do. To speak out, that's a public platform that we have. But of course, the Senate, we're going to have to work very hard as hard as we can. So if you see other Democratic candidates running for Senate in other areas around the country, give to them, because the Senate's where it all happens. But long term, Betsy DeVos didn't happen in a day. It's taken decades upon decades of a sort of welfare system. DeVos has never had to work a day in her life. She's always gotten her money from other people, every day. And, the welfare queens that we're talking about in the 80s, they pale in comparison to a Betsy DeVos. So we got to build a better Democratic Party with a stronger voice. It's to our shame that several Democratic members fought over the past 8 years to make more charter schools. And they fought in part for some of this standardized testing that's happening now. We've got to stand up and be Democrats and defend public education. I got my start in public education at Gainesville High School. My whole trajectory of my life changed after I started teaching in public schools. We've got to defend it, and the Democrats have got to be stronger on this as well. Other questions? Well, thank you very much. I will now have Marie up.
Thank you so much. So Josh is going to be around, and you can ask questions and mingle with him a little while this afternoon, okay? A couple things I wanted to mention you just to start out is there is a sign-up sheet on the desk up here, and it has some ideas about how you can help with both the candidates that you're going to hear from today. If you want to do postcards, if you want to do phone banking, if you want to do canvassing, whatever you'd like to do to help us get this done, feel free to sign up and we'll send you an email and ask you, or tell you when events are happening. There's also campaign stickers and buttons over here. Lee Shiver brought some yard signs if you're interested in taking a yard sign with you today to put in your yard for his campaign. The one thing I wanted to share with you that really touched my heart today, other than the fact that yesterday when we were told that we could not have this long planned event at Bentry, was that I called Martha and she said, I know what you want, come on over here. So again, thank you very much, y'all. The other thing I wanted to say before I introduce Lee is that this morning, I don't know if everyone in the room heard, but yesterday there was a young woman who was lost, or she wandered away, we don't know the whole story yet, at Bentry.
Right.
And I understand now that she's been found and she's okay and such. But I just want y'all to know that this morning I talked to both of these campaigns on my way over here. And both these candidates said, let's just get the people that are going to be at the fundraiser and we'll get out there and try to find her. We called the Sheriff's Department and volunteered that. At the time, in fairness to them, they said, you know what, we don't need that right now. But that was the heart of what these campaigns is all about. So I just want you all to know that. Now I have the great privilege of introducing Lee, Dr. Lee Shiver. He doesn't like him when I call him that. But he, a few months ago, I was at the Pickens Democrat social hour over at Fuego Mexican restaurant. And it was just after the Parkland, Florida shooting. And all of us were very, very upset. And Lee stood up and said, you know, we've got to do something about this. I'm an educator. My full career has been educating children. And it's just not right what these mass shooters are doing to us, what the gun violence in this country is doing to us. It's not just at the schools, it's at, other venues and such. They're just, people are killing people. So several of us heard him speak, and me sort of walked over and said, "You need to run, you need to run." And so we were chatting for several days back and forth, and then he actually went to see Rick Jaspers, and he's going to tell you some of that story. I don't want to steal his thunder. But during that time, some other things were happening, and he called me and he said, "I've been down to the Capitol and I've declared to run for office." And I said, "What do you need?" And we all started getting behind him, and Bruce Wood is his campaign manager, and I'm doing his campaign finance for him. So I am very pleased to introduce to you the Georgia State House District 11's candidate, Dr. Lee Shiver.
Thanks, Marie. My campaign manager could not be here today. Retired U.S. Army Colonel Bruce Wood had another commitment, and he and I are flying the team when we're talking about this particular issue. Thank you again for letting us get here. I don't know if I'm nervous because I'm sweating so much, or about what I'm getting ready to tell you, or about the excitement that Josh McCall instills in people when you hear him. I think whatever happens to me, what's going to happen when you get to Washington, Michigan, is going to be very, very important to the future of this country, and I salute you for that. You may not be able to tell it, but I am a 1-month-old, brand new granddaddy. My wife's daughter had Max about a month ago, and I went to see him when he was 1 day old. And I took Max in my arms, and I spoke to him in private. And I told him what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I look forward to seeing him again real soon. What happened was I was happily enjoying retirement. I did 27 years, high school principal, elementary school principal, school superintendent here in Pickens, State Department official, director of state school, started my teaching career at Coffee High School in Douglas, Georgia, and I'll put that adventure up against Gainesville High School any day. Josh, that was something else. On a road trip last year, happily retired. My wife and I retired. She retired 1 year as a school teacher. We were on our way down to Key West. And I got in touch with an old fraternity brother of mine that I hadn't seen in 30 years, who had been arrested in Fort Lauderdale. He's an Episcopal priest, and he was arrested for feeding the homeless down there in violation of the city ordinance. So we went back and forth on Facebook and kind of got caught up. On February 14th, when the shooting happened at the high school in Parkland, Florida, it shook me. And I started thinking about a lot of my previous experiences. Mark sent me a message on Facebook and telling me that he had to conduct the funeral of one of those students that was murdered at that high school, and that it was the hardest thing he had ever done. She sang in his church choir, and he said it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. So I sent back some sympathetic comments and trying to be supportive, trying hard to imagine what that might be like. And then he sent me a private message in which he described his visit to the morgue to perform this religious sacrament over this 16-year-old girl's body. And he said that she had a wound on the side of her head the size of this baseball, open, with her skull peeled back. And Mark said he was a changed man. Well, I couldn't stop thinking about that. I could not eat. I couldn't sleep. I talked to Carrie and I said, I'm having a lot of trouble with this, because I started thinking about some things. I was principal of Tift County High School in Tifton in 1999 when Columbine happened. The next day was unbelievable. So far removed, so much anxiety, so much fear. I can remember like it was yesterday. I was the director of the Georgia School for the Deaf when the Virginia Tech massacre happened. Those kids at that school were scared to death. They were truly scared and frightened and anxious, and so were the staff, most of whom were deaf or hard of hearing, even though that massacre was so far removed in Blacksburg, Virginia. And I finished my career at Westtown Elementary School in Albany, Georgia, And I was the principal of an elementary school with 400 beautiful children when the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre happened. And ladies and gentlemen, this stuff shook me. I mean, it got to me. So I knew Rick Jaspers. I knew Rick when I was superintendent here in '99. He was the ag agent. So I went to Atlanta to see him. Made an appointment. Went to his office. Very warm reception. Very friendly. Sat down. I don't think Rick knew what I was going to ask him, but I just sat down and started. I said, Rick, I want to know what you're going to do about the kinds of guns some mass shooters are using. I want to know. Rick said there was nothing practical to be done. He wanted to talk about mental health. He wanted to talk about Chinese terrorists with knives. And I just wasn't feeling good about those responses. And so we went back and forth, and we, it was cordial, but it was, the emotions were there. And then I said to him, when I realized he wasn't going anywhere with anything about guns, no matter what I said, what would you have done if this massacre that happened in Parkland, Florida had happened at Pickens High School? And Rick looked me right in the eye and really said, I wouldn't be doing anything differently, Rick. Now, I was getting a little shaky, so I stood up, I shook his hand, walked out past the staff. I think might be humming Dylan's Times They Are Changing, I'm not sure. And I went down from the Capitol and I walked across to the State Department office, Ryan Kipp's office, and I went upstairs and I got my qualifying papers. Didn't know what I was going to do with them. I'd never done anything like this before, ever. Went home, talked to my wife. She just looked at me, she goes, have you lost your mind? I said, I got to do something. I can't stand this. So Marie's correct. I did go to that Democratic Party meeting in Pickens, but the sole purpose of my being there was to find somebody to run against Rick that I could support and give money to and help win. And this is what's happened, because I started thinking about those kids, and I had to do this. Now, I am proud to say that I paid for my qualifying fees when I went back to Atlanta with President Spanky's tax cuts. And I am like the president. I am not afraid of the NRA. I know bigly words, and this is my real hair. Unlike the president, I am a Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate. I support the Second Amendment.
Thank you.
I am a gun owner. I am keeping my guns, but my guns are locked up in a gun safe at my house, in a locked storage room in my locked home. 26 states in this country have laws that require weapons and guns to be locked up. Georgia does not. The NRA has given my opponent, Rick Jaspers, a solid A rating, and folks, he's earned it. He doesn't want to talk about guns because he says there's nothing practical to be done. Not about the guns the mass shooters are using to kill us, not about any guns. Instead, he likes to tout a House Legislative Committee that's working on studying school safety. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've been studying school safety since the 1950s when President Eisenhower sent federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to ensure school desegregation. Studying something is not doing anything. Both the Senate and the House versions of these committees around the state are getting an earful, and they're hearing from law enforcement officials, school officials, teachers, and some incredibly courageous students. They're studying on such incidents as the one that happened here in Pickens County just last month before school let out, in which an elementary school substitute teacher left her purse open in the first grade classroom and there was her handgun. This startled, scared those students. Learning stopped. She was eventually arrested. She told police the gun wasn't loaded. And she also told police she forgot that the gun was in her purse. And at one meeting in Sandy Springs, the Sandy Springs police chief stood and told this committee, he said, talking about school safety without talking about gun legislation is like talking about the Civil War without mentioning slavery. Arming teachers is a very, very bad idea. It really is. The Dalton teacher was very popular. We don't know why he took his gun to school and barricaded himself in his classroom and fired a shot and scared the crap out of everybody in that school. We don't know that. I can only imagine a teacher having a bad day or forgetting to take his or her meds that day and being exasperated or aggravated with a student. Officers responding to a mass shooting in the future, a teacher that's armed is going to be at risk. Stop. Are you a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun? And if people would think about this, when they're talking about arming teachers, these mass shooters going into schools, they already know ahead of time that there's armed security officers there. They go in anyhow. Now, who do you think they're going to target first if they think that one or more teachers may be armed? My opponent wants to talk about mental health. Ladies and gentlemen, being angry and hateful is not mental illness.
Thank you.
I would really like to debate him at some point in this campaign. The online edition of Smoke Signals reported that my opponent told a group of local concerned citizens in Big Canoe earlier this month that the new state budget will refund back the austerity cuts. It will do no such thing. There is no refunding back the more than $24 million that the Pickens County schools lost since 2003 due to austerity cuts. And I was the superintendent here when they began. Those cuts hurt the quality of our schools, and they are not being refunded. And this happened to schools all over the state of Georgia. This is how too many incumbents operate. They get dug in, and they're going to tell their constituents whatever their self-preserving hearts dictate. The NRA leadership knows and understands this. That's a big reason they do not give money. They hardly give any money to politicians. Instead, they focus on spending their money on provocative media ads and press releases designed to distract us from the role of guns and everyday gun violence and the use of assault weapons to commit mass murder. They intend to distract voters and are counting you to forget all about the last mass shooting. It's been more than 4 months since the new St. Valentine's Day massacre in Parkland, Florida that left 14 students dead, and just over a month since the Texas high school shooting, thank you, that left 10 dead. The fact is that 3 of the 10 deadliest mass shootings in United States history have happened in the last 9 months. The incumbent says there's nothing practical to be done about these guns, Lee. Nothing. But all over the country, other states are enacting laws to do something about gun violence and the guns that mass shooters are using to kill us. We can do something. I believe we can, and there's a lot that we can do. Whether you're talking about universal background checks for all gun sales, limiting the magazine capacity of guns, prohibiting domestic abusers from owning guns, or even assault weapons ban, which this country had from 1994 to 2004, or possibly banning the sale and possession of bump stocks. The Vegas shooter used bump stocks to kill 58 concert goers and injure almost 850 other people. The incumbent does not consider any of these ideas to be worthwhile. In fact, he co-sponsored Georgia's campus carry law and is considered a true villain by university students who are members of an activist organization called Keep the G Gun Free. And they're having a tough time with that. There have already been multiple unnerving incidents on the Athens campus alone that resulted in arrest. One student left a fully loaded automatic, semi-automatic handgun at a bus stop. Another person was arrested for leaving a semi-automatic pistol loaded with a 13-round magazine unattended. I got my time signal from my wife, so thank you. Look, this is a big deal. I'm currently recruiting high school and college kids who want to get involved, and I know that's not something a lot of parents or grandparents or nephews or nieces are going to have happen. But we're going to need courageous young people like the kids from Parkland, Florida, to help with this campaign. That's going to be part of the thing that's going to happen, and I think is the most important. And I've told everyone, including my daughter who's here, Republicans care about this issue. The ones that I'm talking to privately, they look left, they look right, and they lean in and they go, I agree with you. They do. Now this may be a wedge issue, but it could be the wedge issue that carries us to flipping this place come November. I truly believe that. Please follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and today, Instagram. I do want to acknowledge my daughter here. She teaches in the Atlanta Public Schools. She comes from a long line of teachers. It's her husband, my true hero, Jordan Chambers, standing next to her. Brittany was in immigration court this past week, supporting her students whose parents are immigrants in Atlanta. I'm very proud of her. She also participated in the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, and she told me about this. I was texting her, I said, please do not jump on police cars. Laura? Is that you? Hey, Bill? Great Georgia Bulldogs, I gotta tell you. These are great Georgia Bulldogs. Please do not jump on police cars. And do not block the interstate. So I'm lying up in bed and I'm watching the Atlanta news. And they're high-fiving the police officers is my daughter with her friends just walking out high-fiving. She gets involved and she's doing great. She keeps me thinking about the things that are important. Our ad campaign is going to be launched real soon. It's going to be very controversial. Some of you will not like it. But it needs to be said and done. And it'll start next month. But I say, the only person who never steps on anyone's toes is standing still. And I believe that a wishbone will never take the place of a backbone.
Yes.
And I say, why should we wait for something terrible to happen in Georgia before we do something? Thank you for listening. Can I have a cookie? A cookie? Okay, thanks.
Take some questions.
Oh, questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is there some way to expose Rick Jasper's attitude about if this happened in Pickens County, I wouldn't change anything or try to do anything? It seems to me the voters in Pickens County need to know that.
I posted it to my website. I have a blog on my website, and I highly recommend my website to all of you that want to have some entertaining reading. I did that. I know that smoke signals out of Big Canoe. I know the progress is covering today's event. So, but I don't know. But Rick is resolute. And other than that, and the thing about the funding of the schools, I don't have a problem with the guy. But I just can't. I can't have this. I cannot. And Max, who's 1 month old, I'm doing everything I can between now and November to make sure that that child's future is as secure and happy as mine was. Other questions?
Lee, I heard you talk
Maureen?
about teachers' pay and some other things going on in the school systems that would be part of your platform. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Teacher pay?
Yes.
Well, one of the things that I've always had a problem with, teacher pay, Josh is a teacher, and when I was a teacher, it was like, car pay, what is this FICA stuff? I don't choose to be in that. Those tax cuts that Georgia has enacted, many of you may be enjoying the fruits of those in the coming year. But that's because that money, those revenues are not going to be available to public schools. Those revenues are not going to be made available to teacher salaries across the state. A lot of this is being shifted back to the local level and we'll be right back where we were. So I think that's something we have to keep up the pressure on and we have to keep talking about it. And we have to compare our teacher salaries locally and in the state of Georgia with the other states. Teaching is truly the hardest profession. And those people that do it and devoted their lives to it, I salute them, I love them, I know what it was like, but that's our future. Any other? When I worked for the State Department in Florida, I used to be on the evangelical tour promoting school improvement, school accountability, and my staff would put together an agenda and they go, okay, and then you always end with questions and answers, Lee, but it got to the point we had to change that to questions and responses. Thank you very much, I'm glad you're here, and I do want to say, thank you to Josh McCall and his team for allowing me to tag along today. You guys are great, thank you for making this happen.
Okay, once again, Josh McCall and Lee Shiver are going to be mingling for the next about 45 minutes or so. So get close to them, get to know them, ask them questions, talk to them in detail about their platforms because it's very, very important. 2018 is important to us as Democrats and progressives across the country. One last thing, and that is there are donation boxes over here. I often ask people, you know, can you make a donation, can you make a donation, whatever. I know sometimes it's really, really hard. If you're on fixed income, you're raising children, whatever the reasons are. But you know what, I can give up that weekly or daily Starbucks coffee and put $5 in the hat here to help out with these campaigns. So I'm so happy to see all of y'all today and thank y'all so much. And there was a great team putting this together and we all thank you. Mingle, have fun, eat.